Latrell Sprewell is on suspension for attacking Golden State Warriors coach P.J. Carlesimo. Did the media exercise social responsibility when they reported it? Did the sportscasters and sports writers report fairly? Does the prospect of publicity lead celebrities to behave in a certain way? Northwest Cable News' Shaundra Jackson reports.
Up next.
There are many mediums who try to compete with each other to get a story. Among them are King 5 TV and the Seattle Times newspaper. We need to know if the reporters at these two mediums are socially responsible when they present the news to us.
I think we have I think we owe it to the viewer and to the public to not to form any opinions and not to persuade and give too much of what we think is going on, and in fact let them form their own opinions about it. So social responsibility to me is present the facts to them instead of coming out and telling people what you think. Let them make their own decisions.
My definition of social responsibility, I think probably just simple, just one word: fairness. Fairness to the audience that you're writing for, and fairness to the subject that you're covering. And in fairness, I say you try and write with the least prejudice as possible, and you try and give both sides of the story.
As an announcer, there are some things you say and some things you don't say. What defines your job description? Would it be socially responsible to let your emotions take hold of you and affect your judgment when reporting a story? It is not easy to take something back once you've said it. Silvi discusses whether you should take sides or just present the facts as they are.
So I think everybody jumped on Latrell, and it's something that I personally was real careful about not doing, especially on camera and on TV. You got to make sure that you may have personal feelings, but you can't let that interfere with what your job is, and that's basically, like I said, to present the facts. I was actually real glad that I didn't say the things that I wanted to say, because when I first heard about it, I was ready to jump on it and say, you know, hey, this is ridiculous, you know, this is a pro player, he shouldn't be acting like this. But I kept everything in check and my emotions in check when I went on the air, so I was actually pretty pleased with the things I didn't say, because as the weeks went on, it became more apparent that there was a lot more to the story.
The words an announcer or a writer chooses to use are also important to the story. In most newscasts and newspaper articles, people describe the Sprewell incident as an attack on Carlesimo. Was it truly an attack, or could it have been called a confrontation? It may have even been worded as Carlesimo's provocation, therefore giving him some of the blame.
You can't really blame him because he didn't change any of his coaching style. That's the way he's been, and Latrell knew it from the start of the season, from the first day that he became the Warriors' new coach. This guy plays hardball, and eventually Latrell had to, you know, he just snapped. When you hear about the things that he did as far as choking and the death threat he made to him, and, you know, it's pretty hard not to use pretty confrontational words, you know, like attack. The bottom line is, if you're the only guy saying there was somewhat of a confrontation at the Golden State Warriors practice, it's going to look like, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, because everybody else is saying it was a vicious attack.
Asked Spree to leave practice, and he didn't, and the words kind of escalated to some physical contact, and then later on in practice, 15 or 20 minutes later, Spree returned, and there was some more physical contact.
He did attack Carlesimo. That's a fact. You can't hide that. He did attack Carlesimo. Not only did he attack him, but he came back 30 minutes later and tried to get after him.
Carlesimo has a reputation for being a very hard coach. Is there any way that some of the blame should be placed on him? Or maybe he should be forced to tone down his coaching tactics?
His coaching style does not mean that somebody has a right to choke him. I think eventually the media looked at why it happened. It wasn't as simple as, you know, an athlete going crazy.
That's the way he's been coaching for years. When you talk to his former players that play on other teams now, I mean, they're all saying the same thing. The guy, you know, drives you real hard, and he's real verbal, and he can abuse you verbally, and the book on him was out. He ran into the wrong guy and pushed the wrong buttons on Latrell.
What exactly provoked the attack? Whether or not the attack was justified, why did he do it? It wasn't as if he just decided, hey, today I'm going to attack this coach. He did it because there was a history there. Most guys on the team didn't attack Carlesimo, but with this guy, with Sprewell, it's his personality. his temperament.
The media can tend to pump up stories that may not be all that serious. Because Sprewell is in the spotlight constantly, there is a chance that he may have cracked under pressure. Some say it was race issues, and some say it was a lack of respect on Carlesimo's and Sprewell's part.
I think the media, in any situation, especially a volatile story like that, helps to blow it out of proportion. I mean, unfortunately, that's what we do with the day of TV, radio, and newspaper. I mean, we all jump on a violent story like that, and it becomes a huge thing. I think it's the same thing with a lot of violent stories, but yeah, I think with our help, unfortunately, in the media, that it became a really big story, and it brought out a lot of social issues, and they tried to bring out racism on the thing, and that got shot down in a hurry by Latrell himself.
Eventually, people looked at the issue of race because you have a white coach and a black player. What the media does is that it needs to get out the news first, and that's the problem. A lot of times when you get out the news first, you're not able to examine as thoroughly, you know, what you're reporting. You're not able to get both sides right away. You might only be able to contact one person from one side and the other person might not.
When it came out, everybody was forming opinions, but nobody saw what happened. Nobody saw the choking incident. Nobody saw anything that happened inside that gym, so all we got was secondhand information. There's three sides to every story. There's your side, my side, and the truth. I think a lot of people were unfair at first, and then I think as the case wore on and people started to see a little bit more of the facts come out, then Latrell came out and spoke. People started to see his side of it, and they saw a little bit more character of P.J. Carlesimo, and they started to kind of weigh things out a little bit. So I think as the weeks went on, people started to take more of an even keel approach instead of just jumping.
Did Sprewell take the fall for what others have gotten away with?
I think a lot of people were tired of athletes, tired of the fact that athletes are making so much money, and tired of the facts that they have to read about athletes you know, breaking laws and then supposedly getting away with it. So I think when the incident happened with Sprewell, I think most people didn't look at it specifically as an incident in itself. They looked at it with what's been happening the last few years. And I think initially he was kind of like demonized by most people in the media. They wanted to make Sprewell pay. The reason they wanted to make him pay in this case, I think, needs to be examined.
Maybe the truth will never come out. What was Sprewell's motivation? He averaged 24.2 points a game in the 1996-97 season, and he was named to the 1993 NBA All-Rookie Second Team. He was even looked up to by children. In the following commercial, Sprewell is putting forth a positive message about nonviolence. Why didn't he follow it?
It's hard to back away from a fight, especially when you got people around you that's, you know, calling you a punk because you didn't fight. But as long as you can sit back and say, you know, I know in my heart that I'm not a punk, you know, you can walk away from that fight. But I think a lot of times guys just get mad at somebody for something real simple. And I think people should try to get along with one another instead of trying to have this real macho attitude.
Could this coach and players' altercation have been prevented?
Two similar people with the Sonics, it's George Karl and Gary Payton, were able to avoid an incident like that. George Karl, as a coach, when he came aboard 1991, he had a big ego. He was abrasive, just like P.J. Carlesimo. And Gary Payton was a brash young guy, you know, and they looked like these guys were gonna like kill each other.
But they didn't lay a hand on each other. If Sprewell disobeys rules, Sprewell will have to pay for it. Just how much is Sprewell worth for 1 year? Does it really matter? In July, when the ban is up, Sprewell will be picked up by another team and make his money back. Or will he?
I kind of thought the ban for a year was a pretty heavy, but at the same time, you know, not so bad because it sends a message. I mean, the guy's not hurting for money. He made millions, and he will be able to come back to the league a year later and make more millions.
People didn't understand that's a lot of money. He's used to a certain lifestyle. They took, I think, about $6.4 million away, and people are like, oh, he only lost 1 year's salary. I mean, $6.4 million is a lot to, it's a lot to Bill Gates, it's a lot to, you know, Donald Trump.